everybody. Today I am driving for the second time this week a Ferrari 488 Pista, only 3 days after having got out of a 488 Pista Spider. And though that might seem like an entirely redundant thing to do, there are a couple of reasons why it's not. First off, as Confucius once said, when life offers you a good thing, take it. Or actually, it might have been Michael Ironside in Starship Troopers. And secondly, the Pista and I have unfinished business. Just in case somehow you have missed that first video and aren't sure exactly what a Ferrari 488 Pista is, let me give you the short version. This is the hardcore variant of Ferrari's 488 GTB, their entry-level V8 supercar from the late 2010s. The Pista landed in 2018 and was joined very quickly by the Pista Spider, the folding hardtop version. Now, in theory, I actually did this the wrong way around because the Spider came second and it's also the car that commands significantly more. Today, you could pick one of these up for £300,000, but if you want a Spider, you're often looking at closer to £400,000. Now, the Pista follows very much the same recipe as the Speziale that came before it in the 458 generation, the Scuderia that came before that in the 430 generation, of which I own an example, and everybody's favourite, the 360 Challenge Stradale. So, what have they changed? Well, the car is lighter thanks to extensive use of carbon fibre and that good old-fashioned tactic of chucking stuff out, like some sound deadening. Although, from where I'm sat, actually it still feels like a very nice place to spend your time. You have these gorgeous carbon fibre bucket seats, you've still got all of your instrumentation, air conditioning that I'm very, very happy to say on an unseasonably warm May day still works. You've even got a stereo, which is, well, just as pants as in every other 488, and it doesn't really feel like anything much is missing. The engine then has seen some changes to both software and hardware. So whereas the regular version makes 670 horsepower, this makes a frankly staggering 720 horsepower. And when you combine that with a real-world curb weight of some 1,450 kilos, the results are predictably impressive. And the fact that the Pista is a very, very fast car shouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody. But to me, it's not just all of that that makes the Pista remarkable. Instead, I think it's more the fact that this, to my eyes, is the last genuinely pretty Ferrari V8. The F8 that came after was essentially a combination of this engine in what was supposedly more of a series production car. However, one of the issues of the 488 Pista, if you can call it that, is the fact that it was fairly well known that they would sell one to just about anybody. So it's actually nowhere near as limited as you might expect it to be. I think there's probably not quite as many of these out there as there are GT3s, but in short, if when it was being built you had the money, you could have one. And had I had the money, I would have had one, because though I really love driving the regular 488, it's not the best looking thing Ferrari have ever built. This, though, is just stunning. That front end with that beautiful S-ducting, the slightly reprofiled side, that more aggressive yet very subtle wing at the back, the way they've changed the venting at the rear too, those really purposeful exhausts, it's all just really very, very cool. I love the way the Pista looks, both outside and in. Yes, this is effectively the same interior as you would have got in, well, just about every Ferrari of the day, but there are enough little details in here to remind you you are in something very, very special indeed. And on that topic, I also want to give very special mention to this car's owner, Mo, who is an absolute legend, not only because he has driven this car a couple of hundred miles to get to me, but also because he uses his cars. He's a man after my own heart. Now, he didn't spec this car from new, and when he got it, it had just the 1,000 miles on it. That was 3 months ago. now it has 7,000. Oh, I hate when they do this stuff to the road. Now, I have been over this section a few times recently. It's not actually all that bad, but still every little ping into the chassis, it sends fear into my heart. Cup 2s don't help, though mercifully we have the weather for them. Now, if you haven't been in a Ferrari of this era, some of the interior may look a little bit alien, including this steering wheel that has everything on it. But I assure you, spend a day with this and it will frustrate the living heck out of you. Spend 3 days with it and you'll start to wonder why everybody else doesn't do things this way. So I said that this car and I have unfinished business. Why is that? Well, I would be lying if I said that I didn't enjoy the Pista Spider the other day. In fact, I really liked the Pista Spider. It wasn't a perfect car, and one of its biggest issues is the fact that, like all convertible Ferraris of the era, it has a little bit too much scuttle shake. Particularly now this is a world filled with McLarens and carbon fibre tubs, you just can't get away with that stuff anymore. If I get in a 355, I expect it. It's an old 90s car based on what is really an 80s chassis. But this is a modern car. This is from the mid-2010s, and McLaren have shown you that you no longer have to compromise when you get a convertible. In fact, the Spider has more scuttle shake in it than my Aston Martin Vantage convertible. Now, that scuttle shake wasn't just an issue because, well, Ferrari really should do better. It was actually an issue for technical reasons. When you get a car that has a very shaky scuttle, this windscreen moves about a lot. And the net result is that camera there tries to break free, which means that I wind up being a little potentially overly cautious because, well, I don't want that to fall off and damage, well, either itself or somebody's car. This, I'm happy to say, is very clearly quite a bit better. Being the coupe, it is also quite a bit lighter, and depending on who you believe or where you read it, by anywhere from 50 to 100 kilos over the Pista Spider. Ferrari, of course, like to claim dry weights, and here they say it's 1,280 kilos, but that is entirely irrelevant, even if it were true. They say the curb weight is about 1,380 kilos, and in reality, I think it's about 1,450. So, yes, heavier than, say, an equivalent McLaren, but lighter than an equivalent Lamborghini, and still light enough, I think. It's about 50 kilos heavier than the Scuderia, for example, but has 210 horsepower more and a lot more torque. Peak here is 568 pounds-feet or 770 Newton-meters, but with modern-day Ferrari turbos, you only tend to get that in top gear, which here is 7th. The rest of the time it gives you different boost, not just by gear, but also by RPM. The idea being it gives you a more naturally aspirated linear response, giving you reason to rev it out and also helping you with traction. And it works. In fact, so confident am I in this car, the weather, the tyres and everything else, I'm going to do something rather unusual and stick it straight into race mode, which Mo says is by far his favourite. I am going to put bumpy road mode on though, to back the suspension off, and well, I'm going to find out something very important. What is that? Well, the Spider. I really liked it, but, and with the very important caveat here that I have never driven a 488 Spider, just the GTB, the coupe, it didn't really feel significantly different to the regular car. But when you can buy one of those for less than half the price of a Pista, and more importantly, a McLaren 720 for even less than that, that presented an issue. Yes, it's a very pretty car. Yes, it's technically very impressive, but it's also very hard for dream world me spending my lottery winnings that I don't have to justify the price. Things today are going a little bit better though. It still isn't the night and day change that, say, the Scuderia is over a regular F430. You get in one of those and even before the engine has switched on, you know you're in for a very, very different kind of ride. This though does impress in a lot of other ways. For example, the F8 I found was just a bit too firmly damped. This, and maybe my memory is playing tricks, but I don't think it is. This, I think, is more supple, more subtle in its damping, more sophisticated. And I know it's the boys from Woking who often get the praise for their cars being so well damped, but actually, Ferrari really deserve a fair bit too, because they often do a very, very good job. And I have absolutely no qualms whatsoever in saying that on a road like this, I am having a lot more fun in this than I would be in a 992 GT3. And a big part of that is the suspension. This works with the road. Now, let me put it back into its race mode, its firmest setting, and see how different it is. That's probably similar to what the GT3 is like. And the flexibility of this engine also just cannot be understated. In fact, allow me to do one of my classic tests to show you exactly what it is that I'm on about. So I'm going to drop down to, let's be brutal, shall we? I'm going to be in 5th gear, and I'm going to get down to about 30 miles an hour. So that's going to be, by my reckoning, yeah, about 2,000 RPM. Okay, and here we go. Okay, full throttle in 1, 2, 3. Okay, there's 30, there's 40, there's 50. I actually lifted there. No, James, you silly, silly boy, I lifted because I didn't need all the pace. Right, let's try that again, shall we? Right, 30 mile an hour, 2,000 RPM, 5th gear, and full throttle. And there's the full boost, 2.5. There's 50. That's 60. To try and get the noise that I know you all like, I have to drive this thing in very, very low gears, chiefly 1st and 2nd. And well, I'm very grateful that Ferrari's traction control is as sophisticated as it is. It's full of acronyms, including side slip control, SSC, and FDE, Ferrari Dynamic Enhancer, and of course all the classics. Okay, now, so for those that don't really know the Manettino, it does an awful lot all at once, and I think it's a really, really good idea. Now, it changes parameters in the engine, the gearbox, the suspension, that you can override that with the bumpy road mode button. But the two biggest ones for me when it comes to making progress are the gearbox and also the traction control. Now, the gearbox in race mode is a lot more aggressive. It's perfectly fine, very, very good indeed in sport mode. And apparently in the Pista, they can now change gear in 30 milliseconds, thanks to all of the things that they have done. And I believe them. Allow me to demonstrate. Now, I've said a few times in reviews of sporty cars like the 911 GT3 that the gearbox is very effective, very efficient, very technically good, but it lacks excitement. Not this one. The only real disappointment compared with the Spider is that you can't hear as much of that noise, but you know what, I want to try something. This is very important. This is a big Ferrari thing. One of the things I love about these cars, and I think it might be true here, is that with the window down, you don't get all that much buffeting. No. I mean, yeah, I don't know how it is from where you're sat, but from where I'm sat, I've got the window all the way down now, and I hear it a little bit more. Turbo spooling up, bit of exhaust noise. Is there a crack on the upshift? Let's find out. Little one. Oh, this is so good. This is the way to drive these cars. It just brings the outside a little closer. And yes, the Spider does it even more, but with a penalty. All right, next up, steering. It's good. It's not Ferrari's best. It is quick, as most modern-day Ferraris are, and I apologise that there are an unusually large amount of vans for a weekend out today. Maybe they've all seen the sun and gone, yeah, you know what, I want to drive my van somewhere. Hey-ho. Anyhow, this steering, nice weighting. I think the initial turn-in, maybe not quite as keen as some other Ferraris, but that might just be a setup thing, and the front tyres are probably close to needing changed as well, but it's not what you'd call blunt, that's for sure. Is the texture and feedback through it as good as some others? No, not quite. The F12s, I would say, actually is better. I like that a lot. It's still nice. Huge amount of confidence that I have in this car. I mean, really massive. But I would say that for those not really into their driving, and even for some of those that are, the majority of the time, sport mode is better. It's a little smoother when traction intervenes. It's still quick as heck, but it's just got a little bit less edge and bite to it. And when the weather isn't like this, or you're not on Cup 2s, I think it just works a little nicer, a little friendlier. But when the weather is like this, race mode, please. It does take a while to start to build confidence in things like this, putting your foot down, knowing that there is more power than you really should be deploying, and you feel that rear just move a little bit and adopt an angle, but the front does still keep pointing vaguely straight, and you get faith in it, then you have fun with it. And I have to say, you know, I do talk about it a lot, but these Ferrari turbo engines, oh my life, they are good. Like, really stupidly good. It just gives you what you want, when you want, and it has so much of everything. It's got torque low down, fizz up top, and when you decide to unleash it, woohoo! Is it too fast? Yes it is. So have many cars been for a long time. It can handle the power though. Brake feel is also excellent, very natural, and these stoppers have got lots of power. Now, I had hoped this week to be able to talk a little bit more about this car compared with its obvious and most deadly rival, the McLaren 720S, because though you might say actually that's unfair, and really you should compare this with a 765 LT, that also is a little unfair, because on paper the McLaren has more power, is lighter, it's also a lot newer of a car. But both of them have 720 horsepower, both of them weigh a similar amount. In fact, the McLaren, I think, is marginally lighter, has its carbon fibre tub. Both of them have an almost 4-litre twin turbocharged V8, and to enable this grand comparison and this really important question, I'd borrowed a McLaren 720S from a friend. And it may shock you to hear this, but it broke. In a very unusual way. So unusual, in fact, it's going to get its own video, but I haven't quite gotten to the bottom of exactly how what happened yet. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. And in a lot of ways, this really is the sort of car that would convince a McLaren owner to buy a Ferrari. It is a much better looking thing than a 720. It is, well, let's face it, not maybe quite as fast, but so close, I don't think it's really worth writing home about. The gearbox, I think just as good really in this. I couldn't declare a winner. The steering, yeah, I'll have to give that to the McLaren. It's also got some interesting interior ergonomics. The McLaren is full of lots and lots of clever ideas, some of which work, some of which don't, but I'll give them praise for having tried. The build quality though, it's less good. Panel gaps on the McLaren, borderline comical. Both actually are surprisingly practical. Both have a fair amount of room in the cabin. This feels a little bit more airy and spacious, and both have a decent sized boot. This one's been a little compromised because of the S-duct, but still, it's far more spacious than, say, the equivalent Lamborghini Huracan. In fact, I think you can get more in here than you could in an Aventador. You've got a great view of those haunches, you can place it brilliantly, and it's really, honestly, not intimidating at all. And that, I know, for a lot of people is a problem. For Mo, it's not. And in fact, this is one of the reasons that he bought the 488 over a Speziale. Because of the massive regard in which the Speziale is held, they still command more or less the same money as a Pista. And if you're talking about convertibles, the 458 Aperta, which was made in far smaller numbers, is a lot more expensive. by about 50%, if not more. And Mo did both consider and try a 458 Speciale, but he found that, amongst other things, the noise of it when you're just trying to get from A to B, it's unbearable. On the motorway it drones really, really badly, and controversial though it may be, he doesn't think it sounds that great. I agree with him. I believe Chris Harris agrees with him too. I feel the same way about the Scuderia. It's a lot of noise. It's not a nice noise. It's not the symphony orchestra you get in the back of a 355 or a 360. Most frustratingly, from outside Scuderias sound quite good, but from inside, not so much. This isn't the best sounding Ferrari ever, but it's nice enough, and again, better than the McLaren. But is it, in coupe guise, better than a regular 488? Yeah, of course it is. Is it lots better though? No. Is it anywhere near the difference you get between, say, an F430 and a 430 Scuderia? No. Is it the same as the difference between a 458 and a 458 Speciale? I couldn't tell you because I haven't driven a Speciale. I am trying, but they are difficult things to pin down. If you've got one and you're happy for me to drive it, please drop me an email down below, and that counts for everything else that's not a 458 Speciale that you're happy to share with me. I am greedy. I want to drive all of the cars. I must, though, take a moment to remind myself this is a Ferrari. It's an object of desire. And driving home the other day, having driven that Pista Spider and maybe being somewhat less than enthusiastic in my review, I started thinking, have I been an idiot here? Have I done what I tell everybody to not do and tried to judge the supercar using the same metrics that I do with everything else? And you can't do that. Supercars aren't logical. They aren't sensible. Yes, I know your Tesla is going to beat it in a drag race. I don't care, and there are many, many, many reasons why I don't care. I found myself when I got home looking at the price of 488 Pistas and the many nice specifications you can get them in. Oh, this one, by the way, Rosso Coburn, and it's gorgeous. And, if I am being fair, the difference between a regular F430 and a 430 Scuderia is about £100,000. The difference between, say, an F8 and this is less than that. It's more like £70,000. Maybe even less than that if you look at the very latest of the F8s with high specs. And I would definitely have one of these over an F8. It is both more special and also, I'm pretty convinced, a little easier to live with. The real tragedy of this car is that it is properly brilliant to drive, and yet, like nearly all Pistas until Mo got it, it wasn't. The original owner even specified the carbon wheels. They're a massively expensive option. And the only real reason to have carbon wheels is to make it drive better. Okay, it looks prettier, but I mean, come on. Although, I am glad that he didn't bring those, because we do have potholes around here still. They filled in a lot of them, but not all of them. And I don't want to know how much a new carbon wheel is. But perhaps most importantly, as an object of desire, the 488 Pista does have my heart. If I were that multi-millionaire that I assure you I'm not, and I opened the garage, I would be very, very happy to see it there. Preferably alongside my Carrera GT, thank you very much. But, is it worth it? Well, only you can decide that. I want to say a big thank you to Mo for bringing his car out, and as ever, to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.